Lance was instrumental in supporting Timpson's, Halfords, and others into employing prison leavers. And he will now inspire you.
This is an embarrassing start for me, but I need the microphone lowered because I'm not the tallest. John, is it this? It is, isn't it? There we go. What a great start. Hello. Thank you, Fiona, and thank you not just for that introduction, although after that I'm really interested to hear what I've got to say this afternoon, but significantly for the support that the Oswin project has given to prison leavers and those inside prison. It's incredible that an organisation, a very small organisation, has got a significant punch and doing such brilliant things. And you may not know this, folks, but the work that I've done with Caroline and Fiona over the last few months is not just about the Cafe 16 in Northumberland, where I've been and enjoyed every minute of it, Martin and Chloe, while I was there. But we're developing open days, green open days. We delivered one at North Sea Camp last year, and we're going to take that on tour now. And we're doing one at Kirkham, another open prison with a huge farms and gardens activity. So for such a small organisation, they're doing a huge amount of work. And you know, I'm the last speaker, so can we just big up Fiona, Caroline, all the Oz winners for what they do. Thank you. That's not a picture of John taking Chili's back to B-Wing, by the way. That's a picture of an offender at North Sea Camp tending to the land. It's not me. I'm Lance Harris. I'm not the love child of Dominic Raab, but I do work within the MOJ. I work for an organisation oddly called New Futures Network, which is part of the MOJ, is part of the prison service. So I've been prison service for 36 years now and been extremely fortunate. I love what I do. I'm a bookbinder from Cornwall, you know, but look at me now. And I've been, when I joined the prison service in 1986 at Maidstone, I was an instructor in a workshop. But now I'm the national sector lead for manufacturing, agriculture and horticulture. And that's how I met Fiona and Caroline in the Oswin project, because of the green dimension to their work and their network. So what the hell do I do? What the heck do I do? Apologies. I'm in church. We can all be forgiven. I do two things. One is I support governors in getting work into their prison workshops generally, or onto their land-based activities. So someone like Lindsay would be a colleague that I would deal with commonly, and her teams in prisons, both in the private and public sector prisons. For us, an offender is an offender, regardless of what colour outfit they wear or where the staff come from. All offenders for us need our support. So I work with governors and their teams to try and introduce work that will supplement and complement their regimes. And in doing that, it's about experience, skills and qualifications that enhance prisoners' lot upon release. The other thing I do, which is perhaps more significant, is to help develop pathways for offenders. So I was really fortunate. In 2010, I met James Timpson, and I was the MOJ board that helped develop Timpson's academies. And I've dined out on that ever since. And then I was introduced to Halfords and DHL and other organisations that you'll know of. And they, as blue chip that they are, and as brilliant as they are, and as pioneering as they were, other organisations that we deal with are equally as important and equally make a significant impact to prisoners' lives. Because one prisoner who might not have been through the Halfords experience could have been through the Oswin experience, and it means exactly the same to them. It glues their families back, it helps reduce reoffending, and hopefully it helps reduce the amount of victims. So no matter how big the organisation, how big the profile, the impact is significant. So I'm grateful for working with Timpson's and how that saved my career, and indeed more recently with the Oswin project and the great work we're doing there. So that's what I do. I try and put work into prison workshops, and as a result of that, the introductions I make try and get offenders into employment. I do that through the teams in prison, so reducing reoffending, resettlement teams, and our colleagues that glue together the regime and support prisoners out of custody into employment. I have to press the button. So, I mentioned this organization called New Futures Network. Like I said, I've been in the prison service for 100 years. We've had different names, and New Futures Network was born out of the 2018 Employment and Education Strategy, White Paper Strategy. And David Gauke, one of our previous ministers, launched it, and within it, part of it said that, you know, all the great work you do in prison about qualifications, delivery, skills, and education that we deliver, nobody really internally then creates pathways and links with external organizations to help offenders get into employment on ROTL or permanently into sustained jobs. So New Futures Network was born. And, you know, the big deal of what we're about is our network. So I deal one day with people who want nuts and bolts put into plastic bags for B&Q by the million, through to call centres or through to Halfords academies. So the range of people I meet is fantastic because each day is different. Each organisation I meet has got their own dimension and profile. So I'm lucky that what I do kind of is varied, interesting, but dare I say it, I help a little bit support what we're all trying to achieve in this room. The people I deal with in prisons are, I mentioned them, the resettlement team, the heads of learning and skills, because that's really important to us to deliver the right qualification to the right prisoner at the right time. Robin, going back to your bit, the frustration for us is when an offender is moved on prematurely, when he or she is that far away from attaining that qualification or that work skill, and we lose them to, you know, the transfer out to another prison is as much a frustration for us as every member of staff. But more significantly for that prisoner, we've let them down, and they've been let down enough. So it's a significant disappointment for us. So I deal with a lot of people in prisons. I work in a fancy ivory tower in London, and I'm a bookbinder from Cornwall. I don't think they realise that still. But my role is national. I'm part of a small team centrally, and I'll show you what our sectors are, but I'm ag and hort and manufacturing, but we've got construction, retail, IT, catering and hospitality, and construction and recycling. So we're a central team dealing with all prisons in England and Wales, and significantly, we have 15 regional employment brokers. So Barry Strong, who can't be here today, but Barry is the Northeast Prison Region New Futures Network Employment Broker. It's a mouthful. And so Barry's role is to significantly work more closely with prisons in his region and develop those links like I do, but on a very kind of localized level. And we've got 15 of those, 13 of which are in each prison region, and we've got one specific for the women's estate and one specific for the long-term high security estate as well. So that's us, New Futures Network. You'll never forget us now, will you? When I'm at fancy dinner parties or events like this, I hardly say I'm from New Futures Network because people run off to the loo. But if I say I'm from the Ministry of Justice or the prison service, suddenly they're interested. So NFN has got a profile that's growing. That's all I can say. And I'm part of that. I'm very proud to be part of it. Right. This is our sectors. I mentioned them earlier. Why are those our sectors? Because those are the work streams that we can deliver in prisons, and we believe we can get offenders into employment. There's another one on there. Oh, logistics is now on there. So things like forklift truck, warehousing, logistics, you know, light and heavy vehicle driving is something we deliver in prisons as well. And we try our best to link with organizations that are willing to explore offender employment, and then we outline the benefits of doing that. And it's significant. I've worked with Timpsons for many years, and their foundation logo is a heart and a pound sign. I don't know if you know this. And James Timpson said, I do it because it's good for business. In doing it, it's good for offenders and gluing their families back together and our communities. But if it didn't work for James commercially, he wouldn't do this. But it's damn good for James because we got brilliant people. They call them superstars. We have great people in prisons, coming out of prisons. So why wouldn't people do this? And the world is changing. It's easier for me to do my job than it was 10 years ago. My mother, bless her, throw away the key, lock them up and all that. But we're in a different society now, and thank goodness it's easier for me to do my job because we've never been as popular. The migrant law in ag and horticultural means that European and Brexit, I'm the first one to mention Brexit today. Is that still around, Brexit? There's so many things that have happened, sadly. But, you know, people are turning to our environment to say, well, should we give prisoners a go? Because we've never explored employing offenders before. My goodness, what's going to happen to us? We'll get our wallet stolen and we get assaulted in the corridors. That's the last thing that will happen. So it's easier for me to do my job. How do we do it? You can engage with us in prison industries. Most of our prison industries, I mentioned earlier, we employ 11,000 prisoners in prison workshops each day. Most of our production is for our internal needs. So we make stuff for prisons, what they stand up in, what they sit down on. We make cell doors in our engineering workshops and bars and grills that keep prisoners locked up at night. And if with our spare capacity in those workshops, I might introduce a manufacturing company or a laundry that wants commercial work done. So we shoehorn that in and ensure that we, A, make our products for our internal needs, but B, with any spare capacity, we offer that up to commercial industry. It makes about 5 or 6 million quid a year in revenue, and that goes back into central funds, okay? Or the governor can get hold of some of it, but it's a bit of a big bureaucracy, you can imagine. However, it's there. We all know what release on temporary license is. It happens about 2 years into the last couple of years of a prisoner's sentence, and it's that way of developing links for an offender as they are coming out of prison. And it's try before you buy for both parties. The prisoner gets to see the organisation and vice versa. And often, Timpson, he didn't mention it earlier, Darren's, with Timpson's ROTL programmes, 92% of offenders they take on ROTL end up in sustained employment with them. Such a brilliant way of engaging and kind of, you know, staking each other out and making it work. Rather than being released from prison and then starting on Monday morning, that's a big chasm. ROTL is, you know, you can imagine. And of course, the other one is permanent employment on release. So, yeah, that's what I do. And that's what my colleagues do and what hundreds of great colleagues in prisons do as well. If we can't do it on our own, that's why we need you here. That's why we need our network, as in New Futures Network, and all our networks to work. We can't do this on our own. So the more people we engage who are convinced it's the right thing to do, the more success we'll have. Hands up, who's not been into a prison? Leave now. Get out. Well, welcome. We're all pretty civilized. We're all trying to do the right thing. These are our industries that we have. These are significant industries. There's other things that go on. There's craft shops, there's hobby shops, there's pockets of great initiative going on in all prisons. But this is where most of our work happens in prison industries. There's other work like kitchens and cleaning and recycling and waste management, of course. But that's a pretty varied list of things to allow prisoners to go in and significantly deliver qualifications that are recognized externally, that means something to an employer, that means an offender might just get their foot in the door to an interview because they've got the right qualification and people are surprised that they've got it from in prison. And it's a huge range of things that we manufacture. A couple that I just want to emphasize there, the last 3 or 4. Recycling. Recycling is often boring, mundane, repetitive, a bit dirty, and is kind of sneered upon in some places. Forget all that. Wherever you're being resettled to or living, you can find employment in the recycling sector. Green-collar workers are all part of the new thinking about saving the planet. So we develop hundreds and hundreds of offenders in green-collar work. And whilst there are challenges, you know, it's not seen as the greatest, you know, paid area of employment, it can be a first rung on the ladder back into gluing your family back together to get sustained employment and so on. So we do a huge amount of recycling and waste management in prison workshops, and it's got a real place because it's a modern industry as well. Contract services. I mentioned earlier, nuts and bolts in bags. You're fully trained in 5 minutes. If you've got offenders in your workshop or in your prison that are only there for short term, put them into contract service workshops. You're supporting British industry. You're giving offenders an opportunity to get into the habit of work. And I think significantly, in a prison regime, you need a portfolio. Yeah, you can have a Timpson Academy, and everybody wants to go running to the Timpson Academy because it's brilliant, and you get jobs on release, and it'll... Please don't go. You know, there's opportunities at that end. But do you know what? For some prisoners, they're a mile away from that. And so going into a contract service workshop, getting into the habit of work, taking instruction, and for us, our staff can use them as an assessment centre almost. You want to go to the Timpson Academy? Give me 2 good months in the contract service workshop of diligence, hard working, good quality, taking instruction, engagement, as a real good way for our staff to say, do you know what? You've earned that now. Let's put you up into what you want and start your progression through your sentence. So contract services gets a bit of bad shtick from our friends in Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Prisons, but I don't think they realise the significant importance of it, because people out there are putting nuts and bolts in bags, and they're gluing their families together, and they're paying their mortgages and their bills and having, you know, food on the table. So I oppose strongly anybody who dismisses contract services. The other side of that is, the Pygmalion effect, if you treat people badly and downplay the significance of contract services, funny, people will act badly. So I think we should, you know, big up the significance of that niche sector, because it's got a real place. Call centres, COVID sadly has harpooned us a little bit, but we were doing some brilliant work in the call centres. Proudest moment of my whole career, Drake Hall call centre, the women there were going into that call centre lacking in confidence, lacking in self-esteem, not realising that they could do this stuff, had no intention of working in a call centre. And with the commercial partner we had, we delivered this training program and got the offenders, the ladies, the residents there working in call centres, and their confidence, their smile, their esteem, their employment prospects on release enhanced greatly. And we did some great work there. COVID stuffed us a little bit, but that work is brilliant. And it's, again, a growing has been a growing market in this country for years and years. And the last one, land-based activities. In the old days, it was called farms and gardens. We sold off a load of prison farms, sadly, but people have now realised 20 years later, you know what, that was good stuff. Animal husbandry, livestock management, machine maintenance, growing crops, supplying chilies. There's a market out there, John, as you know. And so land-based activities for me represents a couple of challenges. One is the perception. An offender who's from an urban background going to a rural industry that's out in the country and miles away, how do I get to work there? Is not well paid, it's cold, it's miserable, it's in January and I'm picking spuds and it's backbreaking. We've got to do something about that, but LBA, land-based activity, ain't all about that. landscape gardening, sports field maintenance, vertical farm. We've got a vertical farm pilot at Hewell Prison down in the Midlands. So, and new technologies within that sector. So yeah, there's a bit of back-breaking spud picking, but that's not all what land-based activity is about. So we're trying to develop pathways into employment, but also convince prisoners that it ain't just a back-breaking, poorly paid job. Right. Okay. I think, like I said earlier, my job has got a lot easier because organisations realise that through their labour shortages and to attract a different and inclusive workforce, we represent that. So there's just a list that you can read there. I don't need to explain anything to them, to you. I think significantly, if you say that by employing people coming out of prison, you could importantly, reduce the amount of victims, make your communities safer, help people glue their families back together, stop crime. They're pretty significant reasons why people should employ prisoners on rottle or on release. And so it's an open door. I'm going to use the phrase, Lindsay, it is an open door for us that we're pushing against because the world has changed. And this is what employers say to us, that, you know, advertising costs money. Darren said it. It's a very cheap way and effective way of recruiting staff into the Timpson group. It increases diversity and inclusion and, you know, social responsibility, and, you know, challenge or significantly meets their shortages in skills, reducing staff. And we did a survey a while ago, and I think, you know, the majority, 70-odd% said that people that they'd employed out of prisons were punctual, conscientious, loyal, turned up on time, took instruction well, remained in employment with them longer than other sources of recruitment they'd used. So there's a momentum to this. Right. I suppose I couldn't do this slide without putting the Oswin project first. Above Timpson's, Fiona. So we did, indeed. Exactly. Thank you very much. So there's some household names there. There's one or two that you might not know of. Hands up, anybody. GFIE, Giffey, Beverly. Perfect. Fantastic. So as Beverly says, because she knows this, because she's working with us already, there's a government scheme. You know, at last, having told everybody else you should be employing prisoners on release and on rottle, we're doing it ourselves. And there's this oddly named scheme, again, called Going Forward into Employment, where the civil service is now actively recruiting from custodial backgrounds. And just a couple of highlights for us recently. 2 ex-prisoners, prison leavers, have become instructors in Ford Prison in the plastic injection moulding workshop. We love that. That's a great story. A fella in our team, one of our regional brokers, did 7 years for a range of criminal activities. He became one of our NFN employment brokers, and others as well. And we're even convincing the MOD to take people, you know, of all people. So I put that list up because it represents the sectors that we deal with, a whole range of organisations across a whole range of different employment opportunities. Greg, you know, Halfords, Impress Plastics down on the south coast, outsource work into HM Prison Ford. We make plastic widgets for them by the million. They've developed a little academy. We call it the distribution centre. Prisoners are doing secondary operations, and getting stuff ready for distribution and delivery. They then employ prisoners on Rottle out of there, and they also employ prisoners in sustained employment. So they do the whole tick box for us. Brilliant. Kier Construction, you might know, huge construction industry. There's others I could have put up. But yeah, all good. And the Oswin project, who are they? It doesn't matter how big you are. Size doesn't matter here. It's the impact you have and the lives you change. So we're enjoying the stuff we're doing together. We were in Kirkham last week. We've convinced them they're going to have an open day targeting the ag and agriculture and horticultural sector. Fiona and Caroline's network of organisations in that sector, the people we'll attract in and the prison attract, we'll have a great day. The one we did at North Sea Camp, 20 organisations came, mostly local, growers, packers, farmers, pickers and the like. One or two national organisations, one big distributor, Fresh Link. You'll see their lorries now that I've mentioned it. You'll see their lorries this week. Are linking with North Sea Camp, and we're developing employment pathways. So it's brilliant. And it shows prisoners, actually, this is what we're trying to do, you know? So it's important stuff. Right, nearly there, folks. There's about another 20 slides, I think. Oh, no. No. If you want to get hold of me, I have spelt it right, so I've not fooled you now. That is my email address. Dare I ask, if you've any questions, I got 2 minutes of questions before we do one last thing. Sir.
Very interesting. There's one thing that I didn't see that I thought I might see. In the North East of England, got a much higher percentage of our working population working in the public sector. Everything you referred to in private sector businesses. What's the public sector
Yep.
you have taken on it?
Yeah, so that scheme there, Giphy, you know, an odd one, going forward into employment is aimed at public sector organisation, government department, civil service. So yeah.